South Korea and the international community simultaneously reported shocking news. 2 U.S. soldiers stationed in South Korea were accused of being involved in 2 rapes of local girls in different situations. This information immediately created a strong wave of indignation among the Korean public, especially in the context of the U.S. military presence on the Korean peninsula, which has always been a controversial topic for decades. According to initial sources, both incidents occurred near U.S. military bases in South Korea. The victims were all underage girls, making the nature of the case even more serious. The 2 U.S. soldiers were accused of taking advantage of the situation to approach the victims, commit acts of abuse, and then flee the scene. Immediately after the information was released, the South Korean police opened an investigation and coordinated with U.S. authorities. However, what made the public angry was that the initial response of the U.S. military was quite vague, only stopping at the level of coordination without any specific action to reassure public opinion. Meanwhile, in Seoul, social activist groups and many women's rights organizations quickly spoke up to demand a fair, transparent investigation and severe punishment if the U.S. soldiers actually committed a crime. Immediately after the information was published in the press, the atmosphere in Korean society immediately heated up. On social networking platforms, tens of thousands of comments expressed outrage, saying that this was not only a personal crime, but also an insult to the dignity of Korean women in particular, and national sovereignty in general. Many social organizations quickly held press conferences, asking the government to put pressure on the U.S. side so that the soldiers involved would not enjoy any benefits under the special military agreement that has long protected U.S. soldiers from some sanctions in South Korea. Activists also recalled many previous cases in which U.S. soldiers were involved in similar crimes, but were considered to be punished too lightly or even escape punishment due to political interference. Under pressure from public opinion, the U.S. Forces Korea USFK Command was forced to speak out. In a press release, a USFK representative admitted that they had received an investigation report from the South Korean police and were fully cooperating. At the same time, the spokesman also expressed sincere apologies to the victims and their families, as well as deep regret for the wave of outrage in South Korean public opinion. However, this apology did not calm the situation. On the contrary, many people believe that this is just a diplomatic appeasement action, lacking a clear commitment to handling the offending soldiers. On TV news, those interviewed all said, if there is no strict punishment, tragedies like this will happen again. In that context, the U.S.-South Korea alliance is also under pressure. Some South Korean lawmakers have raised straightforward questions about the need to maintain privileges for U.S. soldiers and called for renegotiating the related agreement. If you also love videos like this, please support us by following and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss other interesting videos. To better understand why Korean public opinion is so fierce, we need to look back at the historical context. The presence of U.S. soldiers on the Korean peninsula has lasted for more than 70 years. Since the Korean War, 1950-1953, there are currently about 28,500 U.S. troops stationed in South Korea with the official purpose of protecting security and deterring North Korea. However, this extended presence does not always bring a sense of security. On the contrary, many South Koreans see it as a double-edged sword, both protection and potential trouble. Over the decades, there have been a series of incidents involving U.S. soldiers, ranging from theft, riots, brawls, to serious crimes such as rape and even murder. One of the most shocking incidents occurred in 1992, when an American soldier murdered a young South Korean woman, sparking nationwide outrage. The incident that year sparked a months-long anti-US soldier movement. Then, in 2002, another incident in which 2 Korean schoolgirls were run over and killed by a US armored vehicle further tarnished the US military's public image. Whenever such incidents occur, South Koreans call for a review of the US Status of Forces Agreement, SOFA. This agreement often grants the US military special jurisdiction, leaving many suspects unpunished under South Korean law. This is the hot spot that makes US military-related cases always cause a stir in public opinion. The latest incident, 2 US soldiers accused of raping a young girl, once again evokes that painful memory. Observers say that if this incident is not handled transparently and fairly, the people's trust in the South Korean government as well as the alliance with the US will be severely damaged. Many experts also believe that this anger comes not only from the criminal behavior, but also from the feeling of being ignored and imposed in the alliance relationship. The South Korean people want to see real change, not just formal apologies. Immediately after the incident was widely reported by the South Korean media, A wave of public anger erupted. Social organizations, women's rights, and youth groups took to the streets to protest in front of U.S. military bases, demanding that the two soldiers be brought to public trial under South Korean law, instead of leaving the U.S. to resolve the matter itself. The South Korean government cannot stand aside from the pressure. The South Korean Foreign Ministry immediately summoned the U.S. military representative in Seoul to request an explanation and affirmed, "We will not tolerate any acts of aggression against South Korean citizens, regardless of the perpetrator." This is considered a rare strong move, reflecting the political and social pressure the government is facing. On the U.S. side, the U.S. Forces Korea USFK Command quickly issued a public apology. In a statement, a USFK spokesman said, "We are committed to fully cooperating with the South Korean government to clarify the incident. The U.S. Forces Korea always puts the commitment to protect and respect the South Korean people first." However, these words were not enough to calm public opinion, because this was not the first time the U.S. made similar statements. Political experts say this could have a direct impact on the US-South Korea alliance, especially in the context of the extremely sensitive security situation in Northeast Asia, with rising tensions from North Korea and fierce competition between the US and China in the region. The South Korean media has continuously reported in a harsh tone. Many major newspapers have even questioned, is this still an equal alliance or just an imposition from the US? Some South Korean lawmakers have also called for a review of the SOFA agreement, emphasizing that, as long as this agreement remains unfair, the Korean people will have to suffer more tragedies. Meanwhile, the protests are not limited to a few major cities, but have spread to many areas with U.S. military bases. Protesters carried banners, "Justice for victims," "SOFA must be revised," "Don't cover up for criminals." These images continue to put political pressure on both Seoul and Washington. The incident once again exposed the underlying contradictions in the US-South Korea alliance: security interdependence on one side and social discontent on the other. Without a transparent and fair solution, tensions are sure to escalate. The case of two U.S. soldiers accused of raping a South Korean girl has quickly gone beyond the scope of a normal criminal case, becoming a political and diplomatic issue that has caused tension between Washington and Seoul. During the South Korean National Assembly sessions, many lawmakers spoke out strongly. They said that the South Korean government needs to review the entire U.S. military presence on the Korean peninsula. Some hardline lawmakers even emphasized, there can be no real allies when the safety of our citizens is constantly threatened by so-called allies. In Washington, the U.S. State Department expressed concern about the negative impact of the incident on the image of the U.S. military abroad. Some officials admitted that if not handled skillfully, this incident could become a crack in the already challenging alliance. International relations experts say the most sensitive issue lies in the SOFA, Statute of Forces Agreement, the document that regulates the legal authority of the U.S. military stationed in South Korea. Under the SOFA, U.S. soldiers who commit crimes are often dealt with by the U.S. side before being transferred to the South Korean side, causing many controversies about fairness. For decades, SOFA has been a thorn in the side of the Korean public, and this incident is just the last straw. Not only in Korea, international public opinion is also closely following the developments of the incident. Major news agencies such as BBC, CNN, and NHK have all reported on the incident, highlighting the outrage of the South Korean people. Some international commentators have warned that if the United States continues to maintain legal privilege for its soldiers, Washington's image and reputation as a great power protecting democracy and human rights will be severely damaged. Meanwhile, North Korea has been quick to exploit this incident for propaganda purposes. Pyongyang's state media called it evidence of the moral degradation of the U.S. military and accused Seoul of selling out its national honor by relying on Washington. These statements have increased tension in the political and security atmosphere in Northeast Asia. Notably, many international human rights organizations have also spoken out, calling for a transparent and open investigation. They stress that concealing or shielding any perpetrators will only increase discontent in Korean society and undermine public trust in international justice. Amid growing public pressure, the South Korean government is facing a difficult problem. Either insist on a fair trial for the two U.S. soldiers to protect national honor, or continue to maintain the security agreement that puts them at a disadvantage. Without drastic steps, this incident could have long-term consequences for both U.S.-Korea relations and the security situation in the region. If you find this content important, please share the video to let more people know and subscribe to the channel to follow the next analysis. In major South Korean cities such as Seoul, Busan, and Incheon, thousands of people took to the streets in protest after news broke of the alleged rape of a young woman by 2 US soldiers. Anger filled the squares, where people held up banners reading, "Justice for the victim," "No more tolerance for US soldiers," and "Change the sofa immediately." Many protests took place right in front of US military bases in Yongsan and Pyeongtaek. People gathered and chanted slogans demanding the US return the soldiers to South Korea for public trial. Some student groups even set up tents, declaring they would boycott classes until there was a satisfactory answer from both governments. Alongside the peaceful marches, there were also minor scuffles between protesters and security forces as the crowd tried to get closer to the US military area. The image of riot police lining up to face off with candle-wielding vigil-goers became an iconic image on social media, shared hundreds of thousands of times. Young South Koreans, especially through platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, launched the hashtag campaign Justice for Victims and Change Sofa. Within 48 hours, millions of interactions had appeared, making the event one of the hottest topics in Asia. Many artists, scholars, and even former politicians also spoke out. Some famous singers even canceled their performances to join the protests, attracting public attention. They emphasized that this was not just a rape case, but also a historical wound of the unequal relationship between South Korea and the United States. In the face of strong opposition, the South Korean government was forced to send a stronger message. "No one, including allies, is above Korean law," the Prime Minister said. Meanwhile, the US Department of Defense pledged full cooperation but stressed that all procedures must be based on the current SOFA framework. The escalating tensions have not only shaken people's confidence in the judicial system, but also posed a major challenge to the US-ROK alliance in the context of unstable regional security. As public outrage has not yet subsided, many observers believe that this incident will have long-term consequences for US-ROK relations. Far from being a criminal case, the story has quickly become a symbol of inequality in the decades-long security agreement. International law experts analyze that the SOFA agreement, signed during the Cold War, has now become obsolete in the context of dramatic changes in Korean society. An agreement once considered necessary to protect US soldiers is now being viewed as a shield of immunity for wrongdoing. This pressure has forced the South Korean National Assembly to openly discuss amending or at least adding provisions to protect the rights of victims. Meanwhile, in the US, human rights organizations have also spoken out, asking the military to be more transparent in handling allegations against soldiers abroad. Some US congressmen have even sent letters to the Pentagon, expressing concern that inadequate handling will weaken the US image in the international arena. For the South Korean people, this pain is not only personal, but also collective. They look back on a series of past incidents, from violence, riots, to fatal traffic accidents caused by US soldiers. The latest incident is the last straw, stirring up historical memories that are already full of grievances. However, amid this tragedy, there are also positive signs. Civil society organizations, women's advocacy groups, and the legal community have come together to support the victims. They have not only provided legal support, but also psychological counseling and community fundraising to help the victims' families overcome their difficulties. The lesson of this story is not only for the government, but also for the whole society. Justice must be guaranteed to all citizens, regardless of who the perpetrator is or what country they come from. Silence or tolerance only creates more injustice. And above all, this is a reminder that allied relationships, no matter how strong, must be built on a foundation of respect and equality. While the public continues to watch, the world is waiting to see whether justice will be served this time or whether it will become another scar in the history of Korea, America. If you want to continue following the dramatic developments of this story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next part.